It hasn't been long since I first watched JoJo's. I was trying to get past part 1 for years now, and I finally got through it. And you know what? It paid off more than I could ever imagine. And of all the things that I liked about the show, today, as you probably guessed by the title, I want to talk about stands and why they are, for me, undeniably most unique, complex, and overall the best power system in anime. And I swear I wanted to make this video spoiler free, but then I realized that I won't get to cover majority of the stuff that I want to cover. So yeah, to all you non-JoJo fans, go watch it, become fans, and come back here. Yeah, let's go. So, to prove that it's the best power system, I need to go over several categories, in all of which JoJo is superior. Like, the only thing that can even try to compare is Hunter x Hunter, and it's still not close. Overall, for me, stands were a breath of fresh air compared to all the other anime power systems, where it's just another energy within you that you can learn to control. Haki, chakra, nen, cursed energy, it's all basically the same, with some minimal differences, but still, overall, the basics are just the same. And I mean, we still have Hamon too, because why not? But come on, who cares about Hamon in 2026? I mean, I know that some people do care about it, and some people actually love it, it's just definitely not for me. For me, the concept itself of stands is just so unique, and I find it so ridiculous that it was airing at the same time as Dragon Ball Z. I mean, Dragon Ball Z is not the dumbest thing in the world, but compared to the complexity of JoJo's, it's night and day difference. Like, Stardust Crusader started to release almost 40 years ago. 40 years, and they're still feeling like more fresh than most of the modern anime. I don't know, it's insane. Also, just so you know, when it comes to JoJo's manga, I haven't read it, and the reason is I'm waiting for Steel Ball Run to come out. Once I finish that, I'll hop onto manga. And so when it comes to variety and creativity, the amount of powers that JoJo's has is just endless. And everyone's favorite meme about anyone or anything being a stand user is just so true. When I first saw a monkey stand user, I realized that it's not gonna be your standard adventure. Then, when I first saw Hangman or Reflection Stand or however you wanna call it, I was just shocked, because any other series would have handled this type of power totally differently. Because usually this type of power is the power to get into the mirror dimension and then interact with the things in the real world through it. But it's JoJo's. And so the true power of the stand was actually light, since the reflection in itself, like its nature, is light, and the stand was just traveling from one reflective surface to the other. And I don't really claim that it makes complete scientific sense, because it has to be its own dimension, at least some sort of dimension, but still, it's JoJo's. Nothing here makes complete scientific sense. Complete scientific sense is not something that applies to it in general. Another one that I want to mention is Arohan and Heaven's Door. When I first saw this stand, I understood that basically nothing in JoJo's is off limits, nothing is off the table. The ability itself is just insane, and it probably can be countered only by some heavy reality manipulation hacks, so basically it's just a one-shot for almost everybody. And these three stands that I just brought up aren't the best representation of variety, it's just those were turning points for me, and because of them I realized what's actually possible. And we still remember that we have crazy stuff like Death 13, Bohemian Rhapsody, Made in Heaven, Killer Queen in its awakened form. But instead of focusing on that, I'd probably want to talk about some other thing that unites all of the stands that I just named, and that is how insanely OP they are. Well, to begin with, the power levels got crazier and crazier with every part. First we got a dude that is an immortal vampire, then we got a dude that is a perfect being, then we got a dude that can stop time, then we got a dude that can put the whole world into a time loop that goes on until his plan is fulfilled, then we got a dude that can erase time, and then we got a dude that can speed up time and then even reset the universe. Yeah. So the amount of overpowered characters in this show is just insane, and I'm sure that some of them can definitely solo some strong anime versus just by themselves. But what do I mean when I say that they were done right? Well, when it comes to overpowered characters, it all comes down to just one thing, and it's limitations. If the limitations are done right, the story doesn't suffer, and if they are not, we end up with a story like CW Flash or anything sort of similar, where the writers have to make MC drop like 100 points of IQ on every occasion because they have to make it manageable for the villains. And when it comes to JoJo's, limitations are always on point. Those characters are weak and strong at the same time, only because of those limitations. They don't really blow up cities with their punches, and they don't seem that strong, but those Hex abilities are just insane, and some of them can affect the entire universe. For example, Dio, even though he can't stop time, he has this one-shot ability. His range is pretty small and he has to get really close to people to actually execute this one-shot ability. But it's not only about limitations, even though they are really important. I think that the main reason why Stance became my favorite power system is because Araki, for all these years, has been executing one specific thing, absolutely flawlessly. Now, this one is fantastic and probably my favorite thing in JoJo's, and as an example, I want to cover the final fight with Kira in part 4. For me, the fact that Moria warriors were able to defeat him and his crazy ability without Kira doing anything stupid or careless is the best evidence for perfect writing. And that was made possible because of two things. First is limitations on Buzz the Dust, and second is Hayato's genius. And now we get to probably the main reason why I made this video, and that is how Araki writes fights and works around the limitations that he himself set. So usually with OP characters, when there is no power that can match theirs, there is only one way to defeat them. It's all about them making a mistake. But as a result, it pretty often comes down to something extremely stupid, like for example MC making the villain get careless just for a second and then defeating them with something basic, which in most cases is the only option since there is no other options for the characters. But there is a problem with this approach, because by doing this, you erase all of the importance the OP character had. For example, if you make Kira slip on a banana peel and hit his head, like sure, you defeated the guy, but you made him look extremely pathetic and he just lost all of his presence just instantly. So what is the solution in a situation like this? Well, it should be something smart. It still should be a mistake because there is still no other way to beat said character. But it should be a mistake so thoroughly calculated that you can see all of the weight that went into planning and all of the work that came into someone falling for that. It might all come down to personal preference because some things that are really obvious for some people are not really obvious for the others. But for me, Kira falling for Hayato's trap wasn't obvious at all. I was even questioning if they would even be able to defeat Kira in general without them having an ability that can match his. Because just remember, in the previous part, in Stardust Crusaders, without Jotaro awakening the time stop, there would be no way for him to defeat Dio. Like, there is nothing he can do. I mean, he couldn't, but we all know that if Joseph was in his prime, he would probably just nuke Dio on the spot and just survive somehow because it's just Joseph. But again, for Jotaro, without the time stop, there was no chance whatsoever. But here, we had nothing. It all came down to Hayato and his genius. So let's look at it from his perspective. He had one objective, to let others know about Kira and who he is. The problem? When he tells anyone about Kira, they blow up immediately and time dials back to the same morning. And on top of that, the ones that blew up in the previous timelines will blow up again at the same time, even if Hayato doesn't interact with them. I mean, it truly seems like an all-powerful ability. It seems like it doesn't have drawbacks at all. But there are some drawbacks to Kira's power, because he doesn't remember what happened in previous timelines. Only Hayato does. And here's our solution. Objective stays the same, to tell Moria warriors about Kira and who he is, but it has to be done before they blow up. Well, because they already did in the previous timelines. And then Hayato realized that he's not the only one that knows about Kira. Kira himself also knows about Kira, obviously. And even though he won't reveal anything about himself willingly, but what if he could make a mistake? What if he could? Then it would be a perfect solution. And as a result, Kira, by calling out his name, signed his death penalty. Bam! Done. And really, the more you think about it, the more you realize that this is the only solution here. Because you have two people that know. One can't talk, and there is no way around that. And another one won't talk. But if you make him, case solved. I mean, maybe for some people it wasn't that crazy or complex, but for me it was mind-blowing and simply genius. To be able to create a scenario where there is only one solution around a complex ability like this, and also on top of that, no plot holes to speak of. Well, at least none right on the surface. I mean, my props to Araki. This is amazing. So you might disagree, but for me, Araki's genius is undeniable. Every aspect of Stance just hit the nail on the head, even though it might not be for everybody, just like JoJo's in general. But it's fine, Araki has his way of doing things, which might make it a bit weird for some people, but we all know that it's not weird. It never was. But it is, was, and always will be truly bizarre. Yeah. Subscribe for more anime content and see ya.